You're invited to the party, celebrating 50 years of unprecedented success in the country music industry. Bill Anderson has written more songs and had more songs recorded than any other country music writer in history, and that's something to celebrate. So we invited all of his friends, cooked us up a big old cake, and tried to do this celebration right. Hosted by Vince Gill, this collection features many of Bill's biggest hits, so we're glad you chose to attend this bash. For one of country music's true legends, welcome to Bill Anderson's 50th anniversary celebration.
City lights as far as I can see. The great white way shines through the night for lonely guys like me. The cabarets and honky-tonks, their flashing signs invite a broken heart to lose itself in the glow of city light. Lights that say forget her name in a glass of sherry wine. Lights that offer other girls for empty hearts like mine. They paint a pretty picture of a world that's gay and bright, but it's just a mask for loneliness behind those city lights. Oh, play it, Hank. I go, Tommy. Dark and God made stars to brighten up the night, but God who put the stars above, I don't believe made those lights. For it's just a place for men to cry when things don't turn out right. Just a place to run away and hide behind those city lights. Lights that say forget her love in a different atmosphere. Lights that lure on nothing but a masquerade for tears. They paint a pretty picture, but my arms can't hold them tight. And I just can't say I love you to a street of city lights. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, and welcome everybody to the 50th celebration of the life and times, I guess, of one of our dear friends, Bill Anderson. City Lights was probably the first song Bill got covered in a big way by the great Ray Price. Talk about pressure. Start the show off with me having to sing Ray Price. Thank you very much. But let's make our dear friend welcome, everybody, Mr. Bill Anderson. Too late now.
God love you. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Welcome, pal. This is long overdue, but you know we do these things so many times, and you have been the one over all these years that has always presided over these ceremonies, and you do such a masterful job that when they called and asked me to do this, I tried to say no, but then when I realized the invitation came from you, I said yes immediately. So we're honored to be here tonight and celebrate 50 years of some great songs and some great records by you. So
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, and I'm honored that you're here to do this. I'm honored that you're here, everybody. Thank you.
We're surrounded by Bill Anderson.
I'm sorry.
You know, one thing I admired so much about you, Bill, in watching your career is how you managed to walk that line of being one of the greatest songwriters that ever lived, but you also made great records. And in a time where, like today, it seems hard for someone to be both, to get other people to record his songs and still have a career as I do, and a lot of other people in this room do the same thing. How did you walk that line where people, I would assume because the songs were just great and everybody wanted to cut them, but I'll bet was it difficult for you at times to say, I'd like to hang on to this song for me, or should I let Ray have it, or should I let someone else have it?
I never tried to write songs for anybody in particular. I just really tried to write songs, and I tried to keep Bill Anderson, the writer, and Bill Anderson, the recording artist, separate. If I found a good song that somebody else had written, I had no qualms whatsoever about recording it. And some of my biggest hits were songs that I didn't write. People think I wrote them, but I didn't. And if I wrote something that Gene Shepard or Charlie Louvin or Jim Ed Brown, any of the people in this room liked enough to want to record it, then most of the time, it was theirs for the taking. There were a few times when I held on to them, when I knew that they were for me. But most of the time, I just tried to keep an open mind about it and say, wherever the song lands, that's where it lands. And I just hope it lands somewhere.
It's been great just getting to talk to everybody today and this morning and finding out just how they might have, started a friendship with you, whether business-wise or personal. And George Hamilton IV told me that the first song that he ever cut for his first record on RCA with Chat was one of your songs. And George, I'd love for you to tell this story. You can tell it much more eloquent than I.
Well, Bill and I joined the Grand Ole Opry, I guess, the same year. And I remember he heard that I'd signed with RCA Records with Chet Atkins, and Bill wrote me a wonderful song called To You and Yours for Me and Mine. It was the title track of my first Nashville album in 1960. And by the way, Bill Anderson, I don't know if everybody in this room realizes it, he's the most recorded songwriter in the history of country music. Wow. Bar none. Yeah.
Thanks to these people.
And what goes around comes around, because that was 1960 when that song was the title of my first Nashville album. And now Bear Family Records of Germany have just released a compilation of all my early recordings from the 50s and 60s. Guess what the title of the album is? To You and Yours for Me and Mine by Bill Anderson. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, George.
Yes, sir.
Could we talk you into singing that for us, George? Could we get you to sing that one?
I'd love to.
Great.
Love to. All right. Wedding bells are ringing on two sides of town tonight. One wedding is at 7, one's at 9. A pair of old sweethearts will hold their new sweethearts so tight. Best of luck to you and yours from me and mine. To you and yours, may happiness flow free. May you find in him the faith you lost in me. And although I don't love her yet, perhaps Perhaps I will in time. Best of luck to you and yours from me and mine. I'm afraid to say I do, for fear I really don't. Afraid my conscience might not walk the line. For even though I'll kiss her lips, it's your lips that I want. That's the difference in you and yours and me and mine. To you and yours may happiness flow free. May you find in him the faith you lost in me. And although I don't love her yet, perhaps I will in time. Best of luck to you and yours from me and mine. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Gosh, I hadn't heard that in a long time. Thank you.
You know, I hadn't sung that song in a while, and I got it out and listened to the original recording from 1960, and suddenly realized I was whispering a little bit back in those days.
Well, I'm glad you changed directions and left that to me. But you made a great record on that song. You know, we used to could write songs like that. You know, he's getting married and we're getting married and I'm really in love with you. And, you know, this song. You don't hear things like that much anymore today.
I wish we did, don't you? I wish we did.
Well, it's real life. It happens.
I know it. That is one fine man right there.
Yes, it is.
Since I moved to Nashville all these years ago, I don't think there's a kinder gentleman than George Hamilton. That's always right there. Now the pressure starts. Oh, I've been planning to get even. No, not really.
Oh, is that what this is going to be?
Well, slightly a roast, slightly a toast. You know, there's only one letter that'll separate that. That's S, whispering. When you got to Nashville, did you come with Roger Miller? Did he bring you to town?
Sort of. Roger and I met each other in Atlanta in the late 50s. He was in the Army, stationed at a place called Fort McPherson right outside of Atlanta. And I was in school at the University of Georgia and working as a disc jockey on a radio station. And every time they would bring a country music show to town, Roger and I, we were the local germs, the local spooks that gathered backstage, crashed in, managed to get in the back door somehow and hung out together and became very fast friends. Both of us had the same ambition and goal in life to come to Nashville, write songs, and maybe if we were lucky, you know, make a few records. We kind of made a pact between us back then that whichever one of us got here first would help the other one to get here. And bless his heart, he got here first. He got here about a year before I did. He got out of the Army and came straight up here. And when it was my time to try and come, he introduced me to the people that I needed to meet, opened a lot of doors for me, and truly kept his word. He was a wonderful human being, and my goodness, there was nobody any funnier or anybody any more talented than he was.
Did you get signed first as a writer or as a record deal?
Oh, as a writer.
As a writer first?
Yeah, and the writer, that's the reason I got a record deal. I mean, nobody made any bones about that. Owen Bradley told me, he said, "You're not the greatest singer I ever heard by a long shot," but he said, "I really like your songs," and he said, I think we can cut some good records together and have some fun, and fortunately, we did a little bit of both.
Well, there was a lot of that went on in those days, wasn't there, where a lot of songwriters would make records too, but you don't get to see near as much of today.
That was the key. I mean, for many of us, and you can look down the list: Mel Tillis, Tom T. Hall, Roger Miller. The list, goes on.
Yeah. What I liked about some of the older days is that when a great song would come out, there'd be like a mad dash for everybody to get a version of it. And I love to sit at the Opry at night and hear little Jimmy say, I had the original version, or Gene Shepard say, I had the very first version, or then somebody covered me and somebody covered me. And was it always that way? Was everybody trying to record there was so many people recording the same song, and nobody does that anymore. If somebody gets a hold on a song and it gets put on hold, it's pretty much locked up.
Well, you may not know this, but Ray Price did not make the original record of City Lights.
No, I did not.
Okay. I made the original record in a little studio down in Georgia, and it came out on a label called TNT Records in San Antonio. A fellow named Dave Rich was recording for RCA at the time, and Chet Atkins got a hold of my record. Charlie Lamb took it to Chet Atkins and said, you might want to listen to this song. The original record of City Lights on a major label was recorded by Dave Rich. And he actually rewrote a little bit of the second verse. Somebody told me backstage that you said it was kind of wordy.
Yeah, is that his part?
That's his part, yeah.
I listened to old Ray Price singing it, and he kind of stumbled through that part too. So I don't feel so bad.
Let me tell you how I wrote it. The last verse says, the world was dark and God made stars to brighten up the night. And then the way you and Ray and Dave sang it was, but God who put those stars above, I don't believe made those lights. I didn't write it that way. I wrote it as a question. I wrote, did the God who put those stars above make those city lights? Did he make a place for men to cry where things don't turn out right? Are we just supposed to run and hide behind those city lights? I wrote it that way. Dave was very, and is today, Dave Rich is a minister. He was very religious. He did not like the line, did the God who put those stars above. He thought I was implying that there were two different gods, and that's not what I meant at all. What I meant was, how could God make something as beautiful as the stars and something that can be, as ugly as a street of city lights?
I apologize for not having the TNT version of your record.
You and millions of other people don't have it.
Hey, Bill.
Yes,
I got
T.
a question, Ben. So, my mom and daddy live in Commerce, Georgia, and you wrote City Lights at WJJC, didn't you?
Up on top of the little hotel.
Now, what I want to know is, since to this day there are no city lights in Commerce, I mean, the tallest building's like 2 stories high. What inspired you to write that there?
My daddy said later in life, he said, I should have known, son, if you had the imagination to look at those 2 traffic lights in Commerce and write the bright array of city lights, that you were going to be successful. The thing of it was, T, I went up on top of the little hotel. It was actually 3 stories high. And I went up on top of the building, and what really struck me was it was a beautiful, clear night. And what really struck me, even though there weren't, many lights down, it was the contrast between the stars and the city lights. And actually, if I remember right, I'm almost positive that I wrote the second verse first, the part comparing the stars to the city lights. But you're right, there's not a lot of lights in Commerce.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know, because those extra 3 words in there were hard to get in there.
Well, blame Dave Rich.
All right. Well, you did so many different things in your career. I mean, I loved watching you host TV shows. You had a game show, and was the Better Sex back in was that the 80s or the 70s?
Late 70s.
Yeah, I was out in Los Angeles, and I used to watch you on that. And I love that back in the day there were more duets than there ever is today. Occasionally somebody will get together and record a duet for one song for a record or something. But you guys would make duet records, not only with Jan, but also Mary Lewis here, who was one of your early duet partners. And how'd those things come about? Were those more from you guys, or maybe from the record company, or the record producers, or how did that work in the day?
I don't know how it happened with the others. With Jan and I, it happened because of television. I was doing a syndicated TV show over in Charlotte, North Carolina. Gene Shepard was the original female singer. I think we did the Dear John letter a few times and maybe 1 or 2 other duets. And then Gene was, busy with other career things, and Jan had come over as a guest. And the producers liked Jan a lot, and when Gene made the decision to go, they asked Jan to fill in. And Jan and I started singing duets on television and started getting a real great reaction to it. At the same time, she moved from Capitol Records to Decca, where I was, so we were on the same label, and we went, as best as I remember, Jan, didn't we just go to Owen and ask him if we could make some records together?
Yeah, I think so. Well, we used to, if we were working the show together or something, we'd sit around in the between shows and sing duets or sing harmony or whatever. And I think we both went to Owen and said, why not? You have two artists here, why not, make a third one?
I remember Owen's comment, and this was always interesting to me. He said, what we will do is we'll put the duet records will not replace your singles or Jan's singles. We'll try to find places and slot them in between. He said, we're not looking for another Wilburn Brothers. In other words, he didn't want us just to totally be a duet act. It was just kind of a little extra something. And the same happened with Conway and Loretta, with Porter and Dolly, and the way it went on down the line.
Yeah, it's a shame because there's so many. There could be so many great records made with different artists that don't, just because of label concerns or time constraints of getting records out in the way that it works today.
And getting back to something else you mentioned there about the fact that a song would be recorded by so many different people. The belief in those days, and I'm still not positive that this isn't still true today, the belief was among the record people, at least at our label, was that titles sold records.
Oh,
I remember Owen saying, a Webb Pierce fan doesn't think a song's been sung until Webb Pierce sings it. Meaning that the title, if they picked up a Webb Pierce album and saw a couple of his hits, maybe a couple of songs that were new, and then they saw 3 or 4 titles of other songs that they were familiar. Oh, hey, this is Webb singing Detroit City, or this is Webb singing, another great song or something. Then they would put those titles in, and that's the way songs got recorded so many times, because the belief was that the titles sold the product. And I'm still not sure that that's not true.
I think that's true. You still make a case for people that like a song but couldn't tell you who it is singing.
Oh, yeah.
That still goes on very much. Well, Mary Lou has graciously come to pay tribute to you today. I thought maybe we'd get her to come up and sing one of your great songs. Mary Lou, would you be so kind?
It's one of my favorites, and I sang this before I met Bill. And
Me too.
yeah. All right. I think you'll know this one.
When you found somebody new, I thought I never would forget you, for I thought then I never could. But time has taken all the pain away. Up till now, I'm only hurting once a day. Once a day. All day long. And once a night. From dusk till dawn. The only time I'm so glad I'm not like the girl I knew one time. She lost the one she loved, then slowly lost her mind. She sat around and cried her life away. Lucky me, I'm only crying once a day. Once a day, all day long, and once a night, from dusk till dawn, the only time
job. Mary Lou, where did you guys first meet, you and Bill?
Well, I was singing in Wheeling, West Virginia. They had a show up there that a lot of the country artists came to, and I got to meet them. I was there usually every Saturday night. And Bill came up with his band and did the show, and I would stand back and watch that band and watch them set up them gold microphones. I didn't, I was young and dumb. I said, boy, I bet I'd sound good if I could sing through them gold microphones. But that's where I met him, and then he read a review of a show that I had done there one particular time, and read the article, and kind of was impressed with what the man had said. And then he called me and told me that there was going to be an opening in his show, and would I want to audition. So I said, this is my big chance. I'm going to Nashville, and I'm going to sing through them gold microphones. But I went to Vero Beach, Florida with him, and got out, and it was just a huge crowd. It was a fair, and I forgot the words of the song that I was singing, Country Roads, and I made up the words. He was impressed with that. I don't know what they were, but I thought, well, I've blown my big chance to get to Nashville, and I was so disappointed in myself and my performance. But he was so kind, and he said, you know, I was impressed by the way you covered up that mistake. And then we worked out the details. I was living in Dayton, Ohio, and then eventually in a couple months moved to Nashville. And, you know, it was, I was there 7 years. It was wonderful. I get to hear the songs a lot of times. He'd be writing the songs while we were traveling. And I get to hear them before anybody else did. And I heard Slipping Away before Gene Shepard did. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was a great time. Traveled all over the world, got to see the world, and sing country music. And you know, I've always said a songwriter is a singer's best friend. And we've been friends for a long time, over 30 years. And
I was so impressed with how professional she was, not to have had any more professional experience than she had had. When she got out there and forgot those words, you know, a lot of people would have just, you know, kind of shrunk and crawled in the hole. She just started rewriting the song, making up words and hit right on it. Probably she and I and maybe one or two others are the only people that knew that wasn't the way John Denver wrote it, you know. But she was such a pro, and you sensed that, and you sensed the potential that somebody has. You're talking about going all over the world. You know where that picture right there was taken? Do you remember that? Because you were there.
London.
Huh?
Was that London?
That was in London.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the night we did the first
live album.
First live satellite broadcast
Yes.
from London to the United States.
Yes.
First time.
And didn't they carry it on the Grand Ole Opry on WSM? I thought they did.
Yeah.
Our first live satellite. Yeah. So we're part of really history.
Did he ever make you drive the bus?
No, as a matter of fact, he wasn't on the bus one time, and I really wanted to drive that bus. I wanted to just feel that experience of the bus, and one of the band members was driving, and I said, you know, I really like to drive this bus. He said, come on. Bill ain't here. And, so
Now I
got myself behind that wheel, and, you know, I said, that's enough. That's too much equipment for me. I can't handle that.
Jan you drove the bus one night.
I surely did.
And why, Bill?
You were asleep.
Because I was asleep.
Yeah, you were.
Just saying.
Oh, wait a minute. Bill was asleep, and everybody was asleep except the driver. He was up there, and I was riding shotgun. And the relief driver, Steve, was sitting back here somewhere. But anyway, I said, I bet I could do that. I bet I could do that. He said, you want to try? And I said, sure. So he raised up, I slid in underneath him. And so he sat over here in the jump seat, and I'm tooling down the interstate. And all of a sudden I saw in the rearview mirror the door open, and Bill stuck his head out there, and he was okay. He looked over there and saw Tom, the driver. And then he looked back there and saw Steve sitting back there, And he looked up there and saw me, and he said, "Oh my God, we're going to be killed." Get out of that seat. Get out of that. I said, okay.
Is that when he became Screaming Bill Anderson?
Yeah, he can scream. Yeah, I taught him to holler.
Oh, man. Well, no, back in the day, I know a lot of musicians would get gigs if they could fit in the uniform and drive the bus.
That was it.
Oh, I had another one. Fit in the uniform, drive the bus, and field ground balls in the infield. I had a softball team.
That's right.
Yeah, and after the guy proved he could play and fit in the clothes, I'd see how fast he could run to first base before I hired him.
Well, I know you're excited the Atlanta Braves are in the playoffs.
How about that? Yeah, I really am.
Your beloved Braves. I know you're a baseball fan, a basketball fan, and did you come by that honestly? Were you an athletic kid? Did you play ball as a
I
kid?
don't know. Look over there to that picture. Does that look athletic? I don't know.
You look like a lefty. Are you playing first base?
I was playing first base. Well, a left-hander can't play but a few places.
That's what I'm
He can
saying.
pitch
That's
and
the
he can
only
play
place they
first
could
base.
put a lefty, it seemed like.
I pitched baseball in high school, and then when got up here and started playing softball, I played first base most. I played football for a couple of years and learned a lot of great lessons from it. The greatest lesson was that's a rough game.
Yeah.
I don't need to be out there playing that. But I'm like you. I love sports. It's kind of a hobby of mine, and whatever's in season is what I love. I just never was like you, and I never got good at golf. I cannot play golf.
Golf is what made me a good guitar player. I couldn't putt. When I found out I couldn't putt very good, I started practicing that guitar. But I was just curious if, so many of us, we have so many different loves, and I know there's a lot of people in athletics that might be baseball player, basketball player that are drawn to musical people, and you find that grass is greener kind of thing. And boy, I wished I could have done that. And I was that way with sports, and I just assumed you were because we see each other at the Vandy games all the time. And
Well, I think we athletes and entertainers are kind of drawn together. We have similar lifestyles. We live out of a suitcase. We travel. We're, kind of in the spotlight and this kind of thing. And for us, the sports is kind of a release. For them, the music is kind of a release, and it does kind of draw you together. And like you, I have some wonderful friends in athletics and sports, and I consider those among my treasured friends.
Yeah. Agreed. I think old John Anderson came to see you today. Where are you, John?
I did come to see y'all.
My brother John.
How you doing, Mr. Bill?
John.
Good to see y'all.
People have wanted to know all these years, if Lynn Anderson and I were married, and, if John was our son.
Sparky was your dad?
And
There we
he
go.
is, right, Lynn?
Of course he is, baby.
Y'all got the same hair.
I've been a good boy.
The perfect package show. The perfect package show. Let's do it.
That's great.
We're ready.
Now,
This is a family reunion. I want to say what a pleasure it is being here today, Bill, for you, and congratulations. I have had the opportunity, the wonderful opportunity, to sit and write with Bill for a day or two, and I hope we can do that again soon.
We need to finish that one song
Yes,
we
sir.
started. We got off on one and never got it quite finished,
Well,
didn't we?
we'll finish it. Yes, sir.
You're a great writer and one of everybody's favorite singers, John. I'm proud we share the same last name.
Yes, sir. Likewise. And I do want to say what an inspiration you've been. Growing up in Florida, of course, we got just a couple or three of the country music shows down there every week, and yours was one of them. And, of course, one of the shows that I tuned into every week and watched and listened, and soon became so in love with country music that I found myself moving up here. So I'll always thank you for that.
What you did was you looked at Dad and you
Lester
said, if he can make it, anybody can.
Yeah, no, I'm afraid that wasn't it. No,
Thank you.
no, sir. But again, thanks for the great inspiration and all the wonderful songs and
Thank you,
records.
John.
God bless
One of my favorite stories about John is he first came to town, he worked on the Opry House in
Sure
building.
did. Yes, sir.
And,
Put the roof on it.
That's right. We just recently reopened the Opry House after the big flood that came here in May. And
Well, it wasn't the roof that was leaking, though.
it wasn't the roof.
Yeah, roof didn't leak. But I learned an awful lot sitting up on the roof of that old Grand Ole Opry. I used to tell those boys working there, I said, The stage at that time was just a pit, a hole with rebar sticking out of it. And I always thought, boy, if anybody ever falls down there, that's going to be tough. So I used to point down at that old hole. It's about 30 feet deep from the regular floor level. And I'd say, one day I'm going to play on that stage. Oh, yeah, everybody says that. So it took a while, but I made it. Yes, sir. I did get to play on it.
Johnny, would you be kind enough to lay a little Bill Anderson song on us?
I sure, let me go get my guitar and
All right, pal.
get squared away here.
I told him one night on Opry Backstage when I was hosting that show, he was telling the story about the roof, and I said, you know, it must be quite a feeling to go from nailing the roof on to standing on the stage and raising the roof.
Amen.
With the applause that he got.
He can get it done. He's one of the greatest singers ever.
Well, he's a stylist. He's such a great stylist, and I miss the great stylists of this business.
You know, you hear him on the radio, and you don't know exactly who it is. And also, a lot of the old singers were, I don't mean to use the word old, but the great phrasers. You know, great singers are not beat singers. You know, great singers are singers that have a way of singing and having a pocket and a cadence and a phrasing thing that makes them special. That's the real art of great singing.
Like Ray Price singing,
Exactly.
I don't believe he made those lights.
Exactly. I showed you how it would sound if you sang on the beat.
Y'all don't get too much in that. I'm fixing to have to do the same thing. I wish I could. This. Again, the record that I learned this song from was our dear friend Porter's record. And again, he was one of the only shows that they piped in down in the swamps in Florida. So I'll see if I can do this song justice. It's I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand. Of this as I can stand. You look lovelier tonight than I remember. I'm so glad I got to see you once again. I enjoy just sitting down and reminiscing. But I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand. So you say you're happy now, you found a new love. Tell him I think he's a lucky man. No, I don't think I have time to see his picture. I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand. There's so much more between us than this table. All those years, all those dreams, all those plans. Yes, you know about me saying I still love you. But I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand. Shuffle for me, boy. So much more between us than this table. All those years, all those dreams, all those plans. Guess you know about me saying I still love you.
but I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand. Yes, I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand.
How do you think of that? Enjoyed as much of this as I can take. My goodness, that was good. Thank you, John, and the band.
Yeah, what about that band? Wow.
You know, there's 3 guys in this band that have been band members of mine and traveled and played a lot of these songs before. Mike Johnson on the steel and Dirk Johnson on the keyboards and Les Singer on the acoustical guitar. They're terrific, along with all the rest of them.
We're going to, 4 of us get to go together and do a different kind of tribute to you later.
Won't be the first time they've done it.
You know, those are some of the great stories, you know, that go on through the years. I had a story that I'd been told that was told for years about you, and I finally went to you and I said, I've heard this story my whole life. Is it true? And you finally set me straight. You said, well, the story is true, but it wasn't me. And I just love, you know, the stories that get passed down. I just recently read the biography of Buck Owens. And it just, so many things. I just love discovering stuff. I'll be honest, there was some of these songs today I didn't know you wrote. I felt like a fool, but at the same time, I was going, wow, it doesn't surprise me. That's why it's a great song. And I just, I think that so oftentimes we get caught up in too much stuff that doesn't matter, you know, and we talk about things that are surfacey. And I brought that, you know, story up because it's the truth. It's funny. I'm not going to tell it because it's a little on the edge, but you know, I think the truth is such an engaging thing. So much more interesting than that stuff that we often live on the surface with.
Well, you go back to what Harlan said, or Harlan is credited with being the one that said it. You know, country music is 3 chords and the truth. And there's a lot of truth in these old songs. I had my heart broken awful bad before I moved to Nashville. I don't know if you've noticed, but in nearly every one of these songs so far, they've been singing about, you know, this third person that you're still in love with or something, you know. So there was an awful lot of truth in some of those early songs.
Well, I think that, I'll ask you this. Did people come to you and ask you if songs were autobiographical?
Oh, yeah.
When you be reviewed or be interviewed and things like that? Because I get the same thing, you know, that I write songs and well, is this about you? Is this about you? And sometimes you think, well, I can't even have an imagination. Everybody's got to perceive everything as verbatim of your life.
Yeah, I wrote a song one time, never got it recorded, but I answered that sometimes. I said, the truth doesn't always rhyme. and so you can't just totally write.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I mean, occasionally you can. I've got a few songs that are right down to the word exactly the way they happen, but, you know, a lot of them, you have to embellish them in certain places if you want to make them rhyme.
Bill, I have a question for you, if I can ask. How did you take these songs to the artists, or did you have a publisher pitching them to the artists, or how did you get these songs to all of these different artists?
In various ways, Rhonda. Sometimes I was really pretty hesitant to play my songs for people. Nobody likes to be told that their kids are ugly. Yeah. You go in, you play a song, so I don't like that. You know. So what I would do, I would make demos. I had my band, and at that time my band was on salary, so we could go into the studio anytime we wanted to and cut demos and all. And I would wait till I had 5 or 6 songs together. Usually, go in and do a demo session. Jan sang on a lot of them with me.
I love to do that.
Various people.
And you sang them yourself?
I sang most of them myself. And that was the best thing I did, because I would sing them myself, and then my publisher would take them out and play them for people, and they'd listen. They said, I can sing it better than that. Give me that song. That's how I got so many of them cut.
I'll ask you this question. Did you find that you've maybe felt sometimes that somebody would say, if that's such a great song, why didn't he cut it?
Oh, yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I heard that a lot. And it probably at times kept me from getting songs recorded.
That has kept me from doing it. I've never pitched my songs to anybody else because I was always fearful of that response.
Mm-hmm.
If this is such a great song,
Yep.
why don't you cut it?
Yep, I got that.
I know Lynn Anderson is here today.
Hi.
Your sister. Hi, Lynn. Thanks for being here.
Oh, you bet.
My grandmother.
Hey, look out now. Hey, we're getting into bad trouble here.
Sorry. we've kidded about that and
For
been
years.
kidded about it. For
I've called him Grandpa too, so he doesn't get away with it.
what do you tell people when they ask you if we're...
I tell them we're kissing cousins, Bill.
Oh, okay. Works for me.
Yeah.
In some states, that's legal.
Oh, wait a minute, that is a little too country, isn't it? Fun.
Lynn, where did you and Bill first cross paths?
You know what? I came to Nashville in the 60s. My mother got a recording contract, and she was a great songwriter, still is, Lynn Anderson, and I was singing her songs. Bill Anderson had lots of songs on the radio done by a lady named Connie Smith, and we competed a lot. It was the Blondes. It was Dolly Parton, Barbara Mandrell, me, Connie Smith way back then. And boy, I was jealous of those Bill Anderson songs. I always loved what Connie Smith, and it was the dueling steel guitar players. She had Weldon Myrick and I had Lloyd Green. And I caught Lloyd in the office on a Saturday one day practicing the turnaround to I'll Come Running to You, trying to get that Weldon Myrick lick in there. So anyway, it was a challenge to try to keep up with the Joneses, or the Andersons in this case.
Well, I was envious of all those great songs your mom wrote too, because boy, she wrote some great ones.
Yeah.
The only thing I can count on now is my fingers. Goodness gracious. What a
From now
line.
on, all my friends are going to be strangers. Well, when I grew up, that's what we listened to in our house. We had songwriter albums. We had Bill Anderson's albums.
You're the one.
That's me. I bought one. Our mama bought one and would listen and study the way you wrote. You know, study just exactly how you crafted your songs because you were an expert. We had Willie Nelson's albums before Willie Nelson was a star. We'd have Roger Miller's albums, and we'd study that music and how it was crafted, how those words and music were put together to make a great country song. So, you've been a mentor, baby doll.
I
Daddy.
didn't know that.
Hey, Lynn, did Lloyd play on all your records?
Pretty much, yeah.
You know, it's I'm one that loves to stick up and root for the musicians, because I always felt like that it was like with your records, or with Weldon playing on Connie's, or John Huey playing on Conway Twitty's records. Those records were defined long before any of us ever opened our mouths and sang a note. Everybody knew what song that was by what the musicians would get us started and lift us up for a great place to start. And I
totally agree. I feel like actually Lloyd Green should have gotten credit for being producer on my records, those early chart records that I'm talking about, because it was he and the musicians in the studio that crafted that Nashville sound. It was all the pickers. You know, they got in there and woodshedded, and one of them would pick a little bit, and somebody'd say, "Yeah, that sounds good with this," and it was the musicians that would create those records.
Sonny Garish did an awful lot of that on my records,
There you
especially
go.
my up-tempo records, where he would play a lot of the little fast picking stuff. He was so good at it.
Well, it was as a student of all of that. When I started making records and starting to have some success, I ran to John Huey, because I loved the way he played, and he's no longer with us. But to me, he gave my music a definition. He gave it a sound, not unlike Don Rich did with Buck, and and Ralph Mooney did with the records he played on, and all those different musicians.
Let me tell you an interesting comment that I heard a few years ago. A friend of mine was driving her kids somewhere and had the radio on, and the little boy at that time was about 12 years old. Little girl was about 8. The little girl was in the back seat, and they had music on the radio. And all of a sudden, the mother realized she didn't really know what kind of music her kids liked, and so she turned the radio down. She said, turned to her son, she said, what kind of music do you like? He said, well, I kind of like all kinds of music. You know, I like rock and roll. I was kind of at that age, you know, and she said, the little girl in the back said, what kind of music do you like? She said, well, I like country music, but I don't understand, why do they all use the same band? Think about that a minute. There's some wisdom there, because where are the Don Riches? Where are the Lloyd Greens, the John Hueys, the Sonny Garishes, the people that made that? And I'm not taking anything away from the players today, because there's some wonderful players here, but I don't know that you get that distinct. I mean, you heard so many of those records from the intro. You knew who was going to be singing.
True. I think a lot of that does not necessarily lie in the fault of the musician, but more in the fault of the producer.
Yeah.
The fault of the record-making process of making it such that it has some definition, some calling card, if you will.
Got a great record producer sitting right there, Buddy Cannon.
Larry Butler's back there, and Buddy Cannon right here.
Produced great records.
I wanted to say something about Bill and from a producer's viewpoint. When we went in the studio to record, if you go in the studio with a good song, you're going to cut a good record. If you go in the studio with a great song, you're going to cut a great record. And so many times through the years, I would call Bill and I'd say, I really want a killer song for this artist. The first time this happened was with one of my favorite artists I've ever worked with, and that's Gene Shepard. We had top fives, we'd had top tens, we had,
top 100s.
Yeah, top 100. But
come in with a parachute.
So I left the label. Went to another label, and I called Gene. I said, let's do it again. She said, all right, let's do it. And I called Bill. I said, Bill, this is one of the most important projects to me I've ever done. I want this lady to have a hit record. He said, let me think about it. 2 or 3 days later, he walked to my office and played me the demo of Slipping Away. And I said, there it is. There's the song.
That's not what you told me, Larry.
Well, it's his day, and I'm trying to make it sound But I'm going to say this, and I'm going to shut up. Why has Bill been around so long? Why has he done this incredible thing with his writing? Every 10 years, he's had a #1 record for 5 decades. Nobody's ever done that before. Nobody. No writer. And I tell you what I believe it is. The product, the things that all of us in this room do are not necessary. We're not selling cars or houses or shoes or food. It's a luxury item. For people to want it, it has to touch them. When they're in their car going to pick up their kid from school, they hear the low volume radio, they hear something that cheers them up. The next time they hear it, they're singing along with it. The next time they hear it, they know the song. Well, those are the kind of songs that man writes. The songs that touch people. And if you don't make your audience laugh or cry, you're not making music, you're making noise. And I am so proud of Bill. I'm proud to be his friend. And one of these days, I'll tell him the story about San Diego.
Wait a while on that one.
Oh, you got it. All right.
Thank you. That's very nice, Larry. Thank you.
Well, Larry, don't you agree that the real impetus behind a great record producer is to know a great song?
Oh, Vince, to me, that's what it's all about. I think, again, I was doing an interview one time with Associated Press, and they said, how important is the song? And I said what I did a while ago. If I go in with a good song, it'll be a good record. If I go in with a great song, it'll be a great record. And another thing, you were talking about the value of the musicians. I never have walked in the studio as a dictator.
Sure.
I walk in the studio with a song, and Jimmy Capps has played on most of the records I made. I'd play him the song and leave him alone. I'd go make a phone call or something and get something cold to drink or whatever. Stay away about, 30 minutes? I'd come back in the room, Jimmy said, how about this? Billy Sanford said, what about this? I've always believed that producing a record is not a dictator. I think it's a melting pot of emotions from everybody in the room.
There you go.
I remember some of the best advice I got when I first started wanting to produce some records was I talked to Fred Foster, and he gave me 2 pieces of advice. He said, great songs will play themselves. He said, the other thing is, he said, understand your job. He said, when you look at great art, you don't notice the frame. He said, just go in there and frame the picture. And that's...
Well, he's one of the best.
Yep.
It's awesome.
He was a great song man.
Really.
Vince, I've always said that one of the biggest rules a producer needs to learn is when not to.
Yeah, amen. I always think they should call them reducers instead of producers.
That's good.
It's all about editing. Gene,
Well, I wanted to say something about Bill as a writer, too, that I've noticed. No wonder he knows how to write lyrics that touch people, because Bill Anderson listens. Has anyone else ever noticed when you're talking to Bill Anderson, he is listening to what you say and how you say it, and he'll ask you, well, do you think or did you feel like he's picking your brain and your heart at the same time, but he listens to you when you talk to him, I think, as much as anybody I've ever been around. And then I think that's how he knows what's going to hit you. He has written, I think, some of the most hard-driving lines to me. I used to always think my favorite all-time line was, there's so much more between us than this table. I mean, what else?
Yeah.
How else can you say that any better and let somebody know what you mean to them?
that's why he does such a great job moderating these family reunions that we've had for all these years, and it's the logical choice, you know.
That's
Cheryl?
the one thing I've noticed about Bill from years ago when we first met him and started being at the Opry, and he was the host of Opry Backstage. He did his homework. A lot of times you could go on a show and you could be asked to talk about the same things. Never with Bill. Never with Bill. You've always come prepared to find out what's the new thing, what's going on, or, you know, pick your brain or your heart. He's not afraid to do that. And we've had some of our most touching moments with questions he's asked us. It's made us have to think and dig in there.
What a nice thing for you to say. Thank you.
Well, I remember the first time I met you, and I was scared to death because it had gotten out that I did an impersonation of him.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm Whisperin Gill. But no, I had it on my codophone for a long time, and you'd call me up and, hello, it's Whisperin Bill Anderson. You know, and he found out about it, and I just started to turn up at the Opry, and I hadn't met Bill yet. And he's at one end of the hall, and I just came in, and I said, oh, crap, here he comes. And he's walking towards me, and he's got some step going, you know, and he's walking right towards me. And I'm going, oh, I don't have a hallway where I can cut out of here, you know. And he walks up to me right away, and he goes, all right, Gill. He says, do me.
That's great.
So the pressure was on, and I said, all right, I'm Whisperin Bill Anderson, and I wrote City Lights. That should be enough. And we've been fast friends ever since.
You know, people ask me about that because half the people in this room do impersonations of me. I take it as a great compliment.
As you should.
I really do it. You know, in the very beginning, when they first started calling me Whisperin Bill and everything, I thought, well, they're making fun of me. It kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. But I came to realize later on that Ferlin Husky told me something that really changed my mind. He said, number one, he said, because he was one of the first people to impersonate me on stage. And he said, I can tell it bothers you. He said, let me just tell you something. He said, number one, if you weren't different, there wouldn't be anything to imitate. And then he said, if I didn't like you, I wouldn't give you the publicity. So it kind of changed my feeling about that. And Bill Anderson is such a common name that the little Whisperin Bill thing has kind of served me well. I didn't have to change my name to Conway Twitty or anything. I just kept it where it was.
I had someone tell me once that, that was the reason. It's interesting that I would find that it would fire you up just a little bit and hurt your feelings and all that, because I always felt like somebody told me that, a doctor, he said that's the reason you've done well. It's because you've got that fire in you, and things like that get to you and things like that, so.
It's been a long time since it bothered me.
Well, good. Let's get back to Lynn Anderson. Get Lynn. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn. George had something to say. Pardon me.
Yeah, I was just thinking, whispering is not the only thing that Bill's especially known for. You mentioned, and songwriting, but you mentioned going to England. Bill and I were together in England on the International Festival of Country Music. And we were flying home on a plane, and Tom Paul Glaser was sitting behind us. I can see he knows what's coming. And we get back to Nashville, and I guess you saw the same paper. I picked up the Tennessean the next morning, and somebody had interviewed Tom Paul Glaser and said, well, you went over to England to the International Festival of Country Music with all the Opry people. And Tom said, yeah. I said, it was great. They said, well, what was it like, really? He said, well, it was great except the trip home. And the newspaper writer said, well, what was wrong with that? He said, I was sitting behind Bill Anderson and George Hamilton IV, 8 hours on the plane listening to these two guys trying to out-sincere each other. That's true.
I remember that.
I love that.
Lynn, what are you going to sing?
I'm going to sing a Connie Smith song. I am. I finally get to do this. I did have a hit record with one of Bill's songs called "I'm All Right, I'm All Right." But they asked me to do this, and it's about time I got a chance to sing this song. So I said, yeah, sure. Let me see if I can do it justice. It's called "Then and Only Then."
Hey, Mike, play it just like Weldon.
Now do Lloyd Green, do it well.
No pressure.
Do Mike. There you go. Yeah, good steel guitar.
In your haste, you left and said you'd be returning. In my sorrow, I forgot to ask you when. In my lonely room, I sit and count the hours. Every minute, thinking I look up and you come walking in. For then and only then will I stop crying, and this aching, breaking heart of mine will mend. Not until I feel your arms around me will I stop crying, and I live for then and only then. Play it. All that's left inside my heart is just an echo and a tiny thread of hope to which I cling. What I know, oh no, maybe someday, if I keep holding on, maybe someday, you'll remember where you left me. Come back for me again. For then and only then will I stop crying, and this aching, breaking heart of mine will mend. Not until I feel your arms around words. That's all you can do in a spot like that.
And you're the pro. You did it.
Well, I had to grab my glasses here, but they're styling in leopard. So, but did I say your words right eventually?
I don't know. I forgot them.
So did I. So we're even.
Thank you.
Hey,
Good job,
Ben,
man.
I have a good news, bad news story about that. I was living in California and writing songs, and I had written a song called Senses. And I got the good news that Connie Smith had recorded my song, and the good news that it was going to be released. And then the bad news was it was on the backside of Then and Only Then. But I was still happy.
That's right all the way
That
to the
B-side
back.
ride was a
There
pretty
you
good deal
go.
every now
Yeah.
and then.
We used to say back in those days, and I've done it many times, if you can't get the side, get the ride. I wrote the backside of a lot of, I had the backside of Pick Me Up on Your Way Down by Charlie Walker and, things like that. There's nothing wrong with that.
No kidding. I
Thanks
think,
for the
wasn't
lift.
it Johnny Russell's Act Naturally was the B-side to Yesterday? Is that right? Yeah. Act Naturally that Johnny Russell wrote
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
was
Right.
the B-side to Yesterday, or maybe one of the biggest selling singles in
That's
history.
something.
I'm not sure it was Yesterday, but
Yeah, he used to say if it wasn't for 3 ex-wives and the IRS, he'd be a rich little fat boy. I love him. I miss him.
yes, old Johnny, last time we got together to do one of these, I think they said that 27 or 29 people that came to the very first one were no longer with us.
30 of them now.
30, yeah.
Too many.
Well, you got to know them all, pal.
Well, when we first started doing these reunion shows, it was, our idea was entertainment, to present entertainment and to have a good time together. And then as time has gone by, we realized that, we've created history in these rooms. And it's been, every one of us, Jimmy Fortune came up to me a while ago, he said, the biggest thing that's happened in my career since I went solo after the Statler Brothers, he said, is being a part of these family reunions. And it really is, it's just wonderful. I'm overwhelmed with it.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of people lose sight of the fact that there's so many people that still love all the people in this room, all these songs, all these singers. And just because they're not on top 40 radio anymore doesn't mean those people have gone away and don't want to hear these great songs. So once again, it's great to be here and celebrate so many years of so many great songs.
Thank you.
When you started writing, was there as much co-writing going on as there is today?
No. Co-writing was, you were very restricted in those days for a couple of reasons. When you co-write with somebody who's under contract to write for a different publishing company than you are, or you were in those days, you could not co-write because the publishers would not agree to split the copyrights, which is getting kind of technical in the industry. But if you wrote for one company and I wrote for another, in those days we could not have written together, and forbid that you wrote for ASCAP and I wrote for BMI. They would not split those.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along in the late 70s, early 80s, I think it was around the time of the Great Outlaws album that Willie and Waylon and Tom Paul and somewhere right in that era. I think, and Bobby Bear may know more about this than me, didn't they just kind of say, okay, we made the music, you guys fight over it, and a lot of those walls came down?
Yeah, when they, Willie would get a bunch of people together, him and Waylon and Chris and Cash and all of them. And I asked Willie once, I said, how do you work this out? He said, we just go in and record and let them work it out.
Well, that's what eventually tore down the walls, and that's when the co-writing really became in vogue. Now, I wrote with Roger Miller because we wrote for the same company. I wrote with Buddy Killen, I wrote with Jerry Crutchfield, I wrote with people that I could write with there at that company. But how sad it is to look back now and think, gosh, I could have written with Hank Cochran, I could have written with Harlan Howard if we'd have all, kind of been under the same umbrella. But in those days, you couldn't do that.
Did country music have a history of guys saying, I'll record your song if I can get a piece?
Rephrase the question.
Yeah, and Yeah, it
Rephrase
did, and I've got a real
Sorry,
good story about that. Webb Pierce and Mel Tillis have some good stories about that. Farron Young came to me early in my career, and he had 2 songs of mine that he had been played, and he said, I want to record both of them, but he said, I can't record both of them unless I get half of one of them as the writer. And I was riding with him in his car up to Springfield, Missouri to do the Ozark Jubilee television show, and he had me right there. I couldn't get out. We're going 70 miles an hour down the road. He said, okay, which song are you going to give me half of?
Did he pick the wrong one?
Well, thank goodness, yeah. The two songs, the up-tempo song was called Riverboat, which was a #1 record. The other side that he and I wrote together was called Face to the Wall. They both actually made the top 10. But yeah, there was a certain amount of that went on. And at that point in time, I would have given Farron Young, probably given him half of both of them just to get them recorded.
Well, my favorite story of a songwriter giving something away was Willie. Giving away, what did he give away?
Family Bible.
Yeah, a couple songs, $500, $50, was it?
50.
Sold them for $50.
Nightlife.
And
Nightlife also.
his response to that was the greatest thing I ever heard. Somebody said, does it bother you that you sold those songs for $50? And he goes, I needed the $50.
Wow.
You know, and just what a gracious way to respond to something instead of being bitter and being, hold a grudge or whatever.
Another great story about him was he offered to sell Hello Waltz to Farron Young for $500 after it was already starting to make its way up the charts. And Farron would not he said, I'll give you the $500, but I'm not going to buy your song. And of course, Willie ended up making, thousands of dollars about it. And the story is he walked in Tootsie's one night and kissed Farron on the lips and said, thank you.
Well, Don Wayne is here with us today, and I know that you guys have a history together of some different songs.
I want to hear, because it's been years since Don and I have discussed this between the two of us, and I've told the story the way I remember it. I don't know if you remember. I'm interested to know if you remember the story the same way that I do about a song called Saginaw, Michigan.
I think I do. I was a tool and die maker. I earned my living as a tool and die maker in the early 60s, and one of the tools that I did my work with was a Lufkin micrometer, a micrometer that was made by the Lufkin Tool Company in Saginaw, Michigan. And I was desperately wanting to become a professional songwriter, so I think that I was greatly inspired by that little micrometer to write Saginaw, Michigan. And I wrote the song, and I took it along with some other songs to Buddy Killen at Tree Publishing. And I think that was the one out of maybe 4 or 5 songs that he really liked. And a few days later, he called my wife to call the shop where I was at working and see if I could come down to a studio downtown. Was it at the Cumberland Lodge building? Was that?
Yeah, I think
Sam
it
Phillips
was,
studio? Yeah. And so my wife got the message to me, and I think I went strolling in there about 3 o'clock in my grease-stained khaki pants that I wore in the shop, and Roger Miller was coming out from. Did he cut Chug-a-Lug on that session or not, or was that the later session?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. But anyway, Bill and his band were cutting some demos, your songs for Tree. I don't know how that came about, but anyway, Buddy Killen wanted me to do Saginaw, Michigan. So we recorded Saginaw, Michigan with I think Weldon Myrick was on the session and some other good musicians. And when the session was all finished, Bill talked about how much he loved the rhyming scheme and really liked the song, but he said it just doesn't say enough. There's just not enough of a story. So, and I think that you were interested in maybe recording it if I could come up with something good, you know. So I said, let me do some rewrite on it and see what I can do. And I got up the next day and went to the shop, and all I thought about was getting a song recorded by Bill Anderson, finishing up Saginaw, Michigan. And that went on for about 2 weeks. And I must have scrapped $200 or $300 worth of tools still at everything I done, because you can't think about two things at once. And my mind was just really, really obsessing with Saginaw, Michigan. But I couldn't come up with anything. But all at once one day, I came up with the idea to do the sting, to have the young kid write back home and tell his love that he had struck the biggest strike in Saginaw in Alaska, to go up in Alaska, and that he had made the biggest strike.
Biggest strike in Klondike
history, yeah. And then I wanted the boy to go back home and sell the old man the claim that wasn't there. And I had the third verse completed, and then the fourth verse, I had the first line, I think, was, her dad met the bus, or met the train in Saginaw, Michigan. And I couldn't come up with anything else. I had the last line to the fourth verse, will you sell your father-in-law your Klondike claim? I know that's a strange way to write songs, but when you've got the story in your mind, you can write the last line first if you want to. And so a few days later, Buddy Killen calls and says, but the deadline is just about here. Bill's getting ready to cut. And I said, well, I'll bring you what I've got tomorrow. I'll write it out. And you get Bill to see if he wants to or can finish it up. And Bill did. He wrote some brilliant lines in the songs.
Thank you. Well, you know, the name Saginaw, Michigan appealed to me too, as it did to you, but for a different reason. When we lived in Columbia, South Carolina during World War II, we lived in a duplex apartment, and the people that lived upstairs was a soldier and his wife. He was stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, outside of Columbia, and they were from Saginaw, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
So I had grown up knowing the name Saginaw, Michigan, the way you saw it on the toolbox, and it was ingrained in me because I knew these people who were actually from there. So when I saw the title to start with, it intrigued me, and then your story was so good. I don't know, you may not remember this.
That was such a melodic phrase, Saginaw, Michigan.
It
just
really
almost sang itself.
What you may not remember, because you said you think that I recorded it, I took it to the studio to record it. I was going to record it. I loved it. But I had another song about a city that we got to first. I recorded a song that Connie later cut called Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati, Ohio.
And Saginaw was going to be the third song on the session, and we didn't get to it. And I told Buddy and Owen and everybody, I said,
did Owen like the song?
Owen loved it, yeah. And he said, well, we'll hold it for the next session. And then before I could get back in to do it, Lefty had recorded.
Who pitched Saginaw, Michigan to Lefty for
Buddy Killen. And I wanted to kill him for years.
You know, I never could hear that matchup.
Buddy Killen was the one that did
and
it.
And even when I heard the record, I heard the Spanish guitar that Grady Martin was playing in the recording. And I said, oh my God, they've cut a south of the border version of a north of the border song. That'll never work. You know?
I never thought of that.
But I listened to the song about the record about 2 or 3 times, and by then I knew that it just had to be a hit.
Well, it was the last number one record that Lefty ever had, and it still gets played a lot. And I thank you for letting me participate in that.
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to say this. earnestly say this. You know, without your input, without your wisdom in seeing the song for what a better song, that song would probably still be gathering dust at the publishing house.
Thank you.
You know, along with millions of others. And also, had that record not been a hit, I would have not been able to probably not become a staff writer for Tree Publishing. And I'm sure if I had not become a staff writer for Tree Publishing, there would have never been a country bumpkin that come out of my heart and became a Song of the Year, and later led to my induction into the Hall of Fame. So I thank you sincerely, and I compliment you on your great achievements. Like Larry Butler said, it's an absolutely miraculous feat to have 3 number ones in a decade, plus all of the other work that you've done.
Thank you. Well, we'll always be joined at the hip by Saginaw, Michigan, and I thank you for that.
Don, would you sing a little bit of Saginaw?
Could I sing it right here?
You can sing it wherever you want, pal.
It'd be fun if the audience would do those echoes, wouldn't it, Bill? if they wanted to.
You know, I recorded this
I know
song.
you did. Yeah.
I did.
Did you record it before Lefty?
You were
No.
bothered with the present tense that we were singing in, weren't you? You made some changes in it.
I may have. That's goofy. But I can tell, I don't think I ever told you, Don, about my experience with Saginaw, Michigan. We were doing a show in Saginaw when Lefty was to receive the key to the city. The mayor was supposed to come down.
Was Bill there too?
No, Bill wasn't
but
there.
I've heard the story.
I think I've told Bill this story, but not you. And it was an afternoon show and an evening show. Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and it was me and Lefty and Hank Snow and somebody when we was doing package shows. Well, it was afternoon show, and Lefty had been drunk on Saturday night. He had one of them nervous hangovers since he
He hadn't learned the song by then, I suppose.
Oh yeah, it was a big hit, and there was some guy hanging around backstage that looked like he did not belong. He had a suit on, and he's standing off by himself, and everybody was fish-eyeing him, and it turns out that he wasn't the mayor. He was the mayor's gopher. And the mayor decided he wasn't coming because we had a terrible crowd. There wasn't any people there, and Lefty, he was very nervous, and he walked out, did his whole show, and right in the middle of his show, when he started to end his show with Saginaw, Michigan, here come this spooky guy walking on stage, and instead of the key to the city, he had one of those gavels with the seal on it, and it looked just like a ball-peen hammer. And Lefty saw him coming out of the corner of his eye, just some spooky guy with a ball-peen hammer, and Lefty turned around and got an arm lock on him and threw him off stage out into the audience. That's great. So in between shows, Lefty was over. He was all excited. We were across the street in a bar, and Lefty was knocking him down again. And he was telling us how excited he was. Says that guy, he just got up and walked out and left. But the key to Saginaw, Michigan.
Didn't he take a while to learn Saginaw?
Yeah, we were on a show in St. Louis together, and Saginaw was the #1 record in the country and was hotter than a firecracker in St. Louis. And Lefty went out and did all of his great hits from the 50s and everything, and he didn't sing Saginaw, and he walks off the stage. And the people are going, Saginaw, Saginaw, Saginaw. So Lefty looked at me and says, I don't know it. I said, well, go back out there. So he went back out there. I went around behind the curtain. I came through and I kind of crawled up behind him. He had on that persimmon-colored nudie suit that he had, and I'm down on the floor behind him. I said, I was born in Saginaw, in Saginaw. And I told him the whole words to that song when it was #1 in the country because he didn't know it.
Well, Donna, if you'd sing it for us, I promise nobody will come after you with a ball peen haircut.
I can't do it as good as Lefty did, but if Jimmy will kick it off, I'll try it. Anyway. I was born in Saginaw, Michigan. I grew up in a little bitty house in Saginaw Bay. My daddy was a poor, hard-working Saginaw fisherman. Too many times he came home with too little pay. I loved a girl in Saginaw, Michigan. The daughter of a wealthy man. But he called me son of a Saginaw fisherman, not good enough to claim his daughter's hand. Here in Alaska, looking around for gold. Like a crazy fool, I'm digging in this frozen ground so cold. But with each new day, I pray I'll strike it rich, and then I'll go back home and claim my love in Saginaw, Michigan. I wrote my love in Saginaw, Michigan. Said, honey, I'm coming home, please wait for me. And you can tell your old dad I'm coming back a richer man. I've hit the biggest strike in Klondike history. Her dad met me in Saginaw, Michigan. Lord, he gave me a great big party with champagne. Then he said, son, you're a wise, young, ambitious man. Will you sell your father-in-law your Klondike claim? Now he's up there in Alaska, digging in the cold, cold ground. The greedy fool is looking for the gold I never found. Well, it serves him right, and no one here is missing him. Least of all the newlyweds of Saginaw, Michigan. He's ashamed to show his face in Saginaw, Michigan. I apologize for butchering it up that bad, but we got through it anyway. Thank y'all a bunch. Great band to work with. Thank you, Jim.